A reshuffled United States men's national team will hit the field tomorrow. U.S. Open Cup play is well underway, and promotion relegation for the USA is real, and it's American. That and more on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to a huge episode of the show. This is Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's most favorite country. Coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. Big day. How you feeling, Mr. Davis?
I'm good. Yes, it's a massive day. We're going to be talking about promotion and relegation, which I have been known to call the third rail of American soccer. So let's touch that third rail today, Robert.
As we touch the third rail, be sure to hit subscribe on the channel, Morning Kickaround on YouTube.com. We are on the edge of 1,500, so let's hit that by the end of the show, Morning Kickaround on YouTube.com. Let's get right into it. We've got a special guest on the other side. Let's hit today's hot topic.
All right, let's do that.
The hottest of topics here on Morning Kickaround on Wednesday, March 19th. Last night, the story in American soccer broke. USL owners voted via supermajority to implement promotion and relegation in the USL League system. For more on this, we are welcomed this morning by Simon Evans, U.S. sports correspondent for AFP, a writer of the business newsletter, Soccer Business at soccerbusiness.com. Thank you, Simon. The Soccer Business.
It's new. These things happen. Yeah.
That's okay. We just want to make sure we get it right. That's all I'm saying. Simon, thank you very much for making some time. You and I had a little chat last night. You said you were on this story. You were following up with USL in this vote. Certainly, the word supermajority is interesting. It means it wasn't unanimous, but from what you can tell, how popular is this among the USL owners who really do get the final say?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't unanimous. I mean, supermajority is like what they talk about 2/3, right? Normally for a supermajority. So, I certainly know of one or two clubs that are uneasy about this, one or two who voted against. But I've also spoken to USL owners in the past sort of 12, 14 hours who are really, really enthusiastic about it. I just come off the phone with USL President Paul McDonough, and he's, as you'd expect, extremely bullish about the whole thing. And I wouldn't say he's as enthusiastic as some of the online backers of the pro-rel movement who are really enjoying this moment, quite understandably. But, he's very bullish about the prospects for this.
Well, so this morning you spoke about it. You said he's bullish. Were there any more details that came out in your conversation this morning that weren't in the articles we've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm not sure I haven't read all the articles this morning, but there is a big caveat to this. And I think this is a little bit of a thing where people can maybe put the brakes on a little bit and consider, a little bit of a reality check. The caveat is this is entirely contingent on the USL launching a new Division 1 league, right? That wasn't, to me, 100% clear from the things that emerged yesterday, but it is. They're not going to do this in the current structure of USL. The words that were used to me was that wouldn't be authentic, and it wouldn't work to have promotion and relegation between a D2 league, which is the USL Championship, and the D3. So it needs this new D1. Now, as everyone discussed after that announcement last month about a new D1, there's a lot involved in meeting those sanctioning requirements as they stand. So for this promotion and relegation to come into effect, you need to have a 12-team Division 1 league that meets the requirement of 15,000 capacity stadiums, all the market requirements and everything else. Talks haven't begun yet with US Soccer about that sanctioning requirement and things like waivers and so on. There's a whole host of other complications with this, but to me, that caveat is really, really important that people take that on board.
Yeah, that certainly the devil is in the details there, and I think we could easily dive into what kind of format would this be? Would this be promotion playoffs? Would it simply be the top 2 or 3 teams, and that to be determined as well, Simon? You know, one of the elements here that is interesting to me is because of PLS, and I imagine there will be negotiations and discussions with the U.S. Soccer around PLS. You know, you don't want, if you're USL, you don't want to have a situation where a team gets promoted but can't meet the standard for the next league, the league up,
Right.
and has to stay where they are. Or you certainly don't want clubs to be potentially folding because suddenly things change dramatically. Did Paul address those concerns?
On the first one, I asked him about, what about a situation where you have the 12 teams that all meet the requirement, and then after the first season, a team in a 7,000 capacity high school football stadium get promoted to the new Super Division 1 league. And he said, well, we'd have to look at a waivers system with US Soccer on that, the details to be worked out. And almost inevitably in this argument, the case of Bournemouth came up, in the Premier League with a very small stadium. And he's like, look, if a club's well organised and they've got a small stadium and they've got plans to expand it, then, maybe there can be some flexibility there. But you're right. I mean, the other question I put to him was about, if you're asking people now to invest in a Division 1 league, because there's only going to, if it is a 12-team league, there's probably only going to be half of that USL Championship teams that get upgraded. They're looking for new clubs to come into that league, new investors with new stadiums and everything. And there's so much going on at the moment that in some ways that doesn't sound as far-fetched as it may have done once upon a time, because there's a lot going on. But if you do that and you're saying to them, please create a new team, build a 15,000 stadium, and by the way, after 1 year you might be in Division 2. That's the classic argument, of course. That's the MLS argument, but...
Right. Let me ask you, because I mean, obviously that just opens the question of expansion, and we don't imagine USL is going to close the door on expansion anytime soon. They'd have to populate a first division, and who knows who's left around in the USL Championship and USL League One. But they're not going to say, hey, we're not adding teams because suddenly we have pro-rel. But if you have promotion and relegation, Simon, and a team comes in their first season, are they immune from relegation? Depending on what league they start in, do you treat this as almost an open system, even though it's not, and everybody has to start League One, no matter what size their market, no matter what size their stadium, no matter what their ambition?
I mean, that's the way it works in the rest of the world, right?
It is.
Which is always the argument about pro-rel. There's so many details to be worked out. You know what? I mean, I really came away from this thinking that I have absolutely no doubt that Paul McDonough is very driven about this, believes it can happen, and believes really his job is to push USL forward as much as he can. But I do feel this is, like the Division 1 idea, perhaps more towards a statement of intent than a concrete plan at this stage, I would say.
Kind of drawing would you call this this announcement and the Division 1 announcement almost like a line in the sand? Like, we're not going to sit idly by. We are going to attempt to shake up the current American soccer structure, and basically giving them like a 3 to 5 year runway to implement both, and just kind of saying what they're going to do and then figure out the details in the time between now and then.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time though, is there? 2028 is what they're saying for launching the Division 1 league. It was 2027 last month, I think, but it's now 2028, and the same for pro-rel coming in. That's 3 years to do an awful lot, but we are in this moment of intense activity. I mean, producing the Soccer Business newsletter and speaking to people in the market a lot over the last couple of months, there is so much going on. I can't stress this enough. And even yesterday, before this came out, USL was announcing, talks in Pensacola about a new team there, working with the city. There's stuff going on in Buffalo and so many places. So while it does sound really, really ambitious, there's also a lot of ambitious plans out there involving cities and involving investors. So some of this might happen, all of it might happen, or none of it might happen. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't be much clearer than that.
No, I think that's a fair assessment of where we are.
I think that's where we live. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the state of American soccer. So I think a cynical view of this, and certainly I was open to a cynical view of the original First Division announcement. Was this positioning the league for a sale? Were there other things happening behind the scenes that we were not privy to? That this wasn't necessarily just about, hey, we are ambitious and we see opportunity. But in terms of promotion and relegation, you certainly, if you're a fan of the league or you want to see promotion and relegation work in the United States, such as this form is, you want this to be because they see this as the natural state, the way that football is supposed to work, as opposed to a cynical view, which is they're doing this for the cheap heat. They're doing this just to get attention, Simon. Now, you pointed out there's lots of expansion discussion, lots of investment coming in to their leagues. They might not need it. They might not need that cheap heat.
I don't think they do. No, I really think, and people, when I talk to people in the soccer business outside the US, I mean, primarily in Britain and so on, they know what USL is now. I mean, that was a conversation that if I was having 5 years ago with people, I was having to explain what USL was, and it's not like that anymore. So that they have got that, and there is that interest. And look, even it's not just the growth is coming from the fact that, it cost $500 million to start an expansion franchise in San Diego. And not everyone has $500 million when they want to start a soccer team in a city. That's what's driving a lot of interest in USL. And that's no different for foreign investors, by the way. And I asked Paul about that, and he said, yes, there has been foreign interest in the Division One club idea. And he thinks that promotion and relegation will not scare them off at all, but actually attract them because it makes it feel more part of the global game.
That's an interesting topic because on this show, we've talked about American owners going abroad for an easier entry point to club ownership, stepping outside MLS's large expansion fees. And so that's interesting that USL's, new approach here is making it appealing for those on the other side looking in. Can you give any specifics, whether it's, floats, talks of investors in teams that exist or for expansion?
Ge I mean, there's one case already, Bay FC with Peter Moore, who was a Liverpool executive at Liverpool, high executive at Liverpool, who is now not Bay FC, that's the NWSL, but the USL team up there.
Monterey. I think you're talking about Monterey.
Yes. And Peter Moore is involved there. There are other people who are looking at it and talking about it. We see there's a Swedish investor in Sarasota Paradise. He's the owner actually of that club. I know he lives over here, but it's a foreign owner of a club. So stuff is going on there. I mean, 500 million is a huge amount of money. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're looking at Indianapolis as a potential MLS expansion market. Are they ready to spend $500 million as part of that process? And does MLS want to drop down from that? That doesn't really seem like an MLS thing to want to do. Mm-hmm. Kind of trapped in that situation a little bit, and USL has that flexibility.
Well, it's fascinating this is happening. I mean, again, let's just be clear. This is, again, a closed league implementing promotion or relegation, different levels that they operate, right? This is not an open system. It does, I do imagine that if we're ever going to get to maybe not a truly open system, but MLS being involved in promotion and relegation, then this has to work, right? This has to be a massive success for the USL to send a message to MLS that you're leaving money on the table or you should be engaged with this, because there's no incentive. If we can bring it to MLS for a second, Simon, there's no incentive for Major League Soccer to consider anything like this.
No. I mean, I asked Don Garber last month what he thought about the USL Division One idea, and he said, hey, we've been doing this for 30 years and the fans will decide what they like. He didn't really go there. But I don't think MLS is particularly concerned about this. It doesn't affect their plans, I don't think, in any way. I'd be surprised. People love to look at moves and decisions and say, oh, they're trying to do this because of USL. And I don't think MLS is looking at it like that. And USL haven't had any discussions with MLS about this, about involving them in the process. I asked that directly. I mean, you do have to ask some dumb questions sometime in journalism, but just for clarification, you haven't talked about this with MLS. No, they haven't, of course. So it is interesting because, MLS is becoming a very expensive place to get into, and USL isn't.
Yeah, look, I don't want to get into the ideologies here, and again, there are segments of the American soccer fan base who are very pitchforks and torches over
Sure.
the idea of promotion and relegation, and good for them. That's fine. I have no issue with them advocating, and people who just want MLS to continue to grow. I'm fine with that too. This probably doesn't happen if MLS doesn't do what it's done in over 30 years and laid some groundwork. As imperfect as MLS is, we're not here if not for what MLS has done. But this does strike me, Simon. And by the way, Peter Moore, it was Santa Barbara. I got it wrong. It's Santa Barbara out in California.
Yeah.
Sky, Santa Barbara Sky, I think is what they're called. This is interesting in the era of the Super League discussions and whatever it is that Unify League or whatever they're talking about over there. Who knows if that ever gets off the ground? But you kind of have MLS moving in that direction. I mean, it's a domestic league ostensibly, but of course it's closed. Entry costs $500 million, and then you have what USL will sell as a more grassroots version of the game, even if again it is wholly owned by USL. Can you give us some thoughts on that as you have watched both these things happen? And again, we're going to see if Europe continues to move in a direction that closes off its biggest clubs from things like promotion and relegation and things like having to qualify for the top leagues?
Yeah, I mean, you should probably get Todd Bowley on to discuss that because he's always coming up with these ideas, blue sky thinking, as they call it in his world, about possible structures and making it a little bit more like North American sport in some ways. Yeah, I mean, there is a contradiction there, and the interesting thing about this country is I don't really see a reason why those two things can't coexist. I mean, it's a massive country. Is it impossible for both USL and MLS to succeed in their plans? The MLS exists as like a closed league, but maybe a bigger, maybe gets to 36 teams, and maybe they go to divisions like the NFL. Whatever happens with MLS, with a lot of money in it and big stars and so on. And then a structure that, allows you to create a team in Boone, North Carolina, and come up the rankings and get yourself to the top division. You compete with MLS teams in the US Open Cup, and why couldn't that exist? There's a lot of markets, and soccer is a game that has a chance to be a professional presence in every community. That's not the case with other sports. That's the massive advantage soccer has got. You are never going to have pro basketball or pro NFL in Boone, North Carolina, but you could have a pro soccer team.
We are on the edge of the undiscovered country here in American soccer. Simon Evans, U.S. sports correspondent for AFP. Thank you for joining us here this morning. Let the listeners and the viewers know where to find your work.
Yeah, you can find my AFP work on Yahoo Sports and all kinds of places all over the internet. And you can find my soccer business newsletter at www.soccerbusiness.com. TheSoccerBusiness.com.
TheSoccerBusiness.com.
Even I got it wrong.
I've started a hope. Yeah, thankfully that's not just my issue. TheSoccerBusiness.com. Simon Evans, thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Kickaround for such an exciting topic. Viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We are edging near our 1,500 subscriber goal, working our way towards 5,000.
We're going to be on this story a lot. We're going to be talking about this stuff a lot. I love this stuff. This is what gets my blood flowing when we talk American soccer. I'll talk about games and I'll talk about goals and I'll talk about championships and all those things. But man, I love this stuff. The growth of the game happening in real time, and we're going to be chronicling it here on Morning Kickaround with people like Simon Evans. We're working on guests. I'm working on somebody Friday, potentially from the USL itself. So stay tuned. Please subscribe so you know when all that stuff is happening.
We're also on social media at Kickaround on the X, Instagram, and Blue Sky platforms. Already some of the binary, this is a terrible idea for pro-rel, or this is the thing that's going to save American soccer, already happening on the articles and on our social media posts. And then ko-fi.com/morningkickaround if you'd like to kick in some financial support. Thank you to all those who have done that already and those who will continue to do so. Let's continue this breaking news of the promotion relegation vote From USL, we'll come right back with a big question on pro-rel here on Morning Kickaround. Big question here on Morning Kickaround, March 19th, Wednesday. My name is Robert. He's Jason. A lot has come out, and let's digest it a little bit. Promotion, relegation. The USL club owners voted via supermajority, saying in favor of the promotion relegation system coming into the USL system of leagues. There's been articles written. We just had Simon Evans on in the previous segment. And so I think let's take a breath and kind of break down what is reported and what's kind of insinuated here.
Well, let's start with the fact that USL has now put out their own statement on this on their website on uslsoccer.com. Headline: United Soccer League adopts promotion and relegation system, ushering in a new era for American soccer. Not being shy with the headlines, are they, over there? Subhead: League owners approve historic move to align with global standards and elevate competition nationwide. That positioning, align with global standards, is interesting to me. I mean, I get it. You're playing to a traditionalist mindset. You're playing to a romanticism that comes from the idea of promotion and relegation as it happens in well-established and historic leagues like England and Spain and Italy, such and such and such, all those places, right? Now, again, I will reiterate something we just said with Simon Evans. This is not an open system, okay? And I said it, and it's here in the chat. Osmiman saying, use open carefully. A lot of Europeans would say it's still a closed league if you have to buy in. It is a closed league system that will institute promotion and relegation within it if they get this off the ground. Does that make sense, Robert? Are we all aligned on what this actually is?
Yes, as long as we go into this knowing that USL is a company, Major League Soccer is a company. They're talking about moving within their own inter-level departments. Not open, but it's
not open.
But it's news. It's news.
No, but no, it is, and it's not nothing. I'm not trying to diminish this. All right, we do not have an integrated pyramid of different leagues operating together in a promotion and relegation setup. And okay, let's just use England, because England is the league and the country people pay attention to most when it comes to promotion and relegation from our American perspective. Now, the Premier League launched back in '92 as a separate competition because the Premier League clubs were like, we're not getting enough money and we want to break away from the FA. Okay. Now, they did that, but they didn't say we're stopping promotion and relegation. We're closing off our league. They still entered into an agreement with the Football League in order to have promotion and relegation. Now, the Football League is its own thing, right? Organizationally, it's its own thing from the Premier League. Yeah. But they still do that thing where they swap clubs every year. That is the only way we will ever get a promotion and relegation system in the United States, is if one league, Major League Soccer, chooses to integrate and operate in conjunction with, in partnership with, another league, in this case, the USL. Now, I will say that history pushed the Premier League into that system back in '92. And before that, of course, the first division was atop the pyramid that had lasted for 100 and whatever years. Right? We don't have that history here. There's no pressure to integrate your pyramids. If you're MLS and you launched '96 with 8 clubs and you had to kill 2 off, and then you grew it up to 30 clubs, and now you're charging $500 million for an expansion team, and you're building 20 and 30,000 seat stadiums, you're like, why do we need to do that? We don't need to do that. Why on earth would we need to do that? However, from a USL perspective, right, operating at a lower level in terms of cost, operating at a lower level in terms of visibility, this is a differentiator. They can say things like align with global standards. They can talk about elevating competition. They can talk about how this is something that makes them unique. The first ever sports league in America to adopt promotion and relegation. That's an incredible thing to be able to say. We will maybe deal with details, Robert, but I think that's what a lot of this is here's a thing that makes USL different. And by the way, as Simon also said, this doesn't mean that MLS is going to suffer, or that it's not a binary. It's not a zero-sum game. The USL achieves something with pro-rel. No, it doesn't have to be. It really does not. And again, maybe one day MLS fans will be clamoring to be integrated with USL so that we can have promotion and relegation. Certainly USL clubs, the ones that win USL First Division, will be like, well, we should be going up, but we're not because MLS sucks. And that's fine. That conversation is also part of the lifeblood of the game in this country.
That's very true. Part of what I thought was interesting between Paul Tenoria's article last night, which was like the breaking news article of that the USL made this vote, was that it was a super majority, so around at least 2/3 of the owners were on board. Not all,
right,
but the most, which is an interesting note. And that the reaction to the Division One news about, was that a month or two ago, the reaction from the American soccer public emboldened the owners to push ahead. With that said, that means that maybe they didn't have the pro-rel aspect of the Division One plan already, like definitive, but the fact that there was such a positive reaction, it kind of said, it was inferred in the piece that kind of gave them the green light to, like, hey, let's be aggressive here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. So there's some quotes in Paul Tenoria's piece, which was posted this morning from a couple of owners that I want to get to. Let me go back to the statement just issued by USL this morning, because they do have a kind of a question and answer element to this. What is promotion and relegation? Why is the USL implementing it? By implementing promotion and relegation, the USL is aligning with the global soccer model and reinforcing its commitment to long-term growth, player development, and fan engagement. These are cheap words, by the way. They're just words for now, but I get why you say them. Every
webpage.
Yeah, every match will matter. From the first kick to the it's very dramatic, right? The phrasing, the framing is very dramatic. Every match will matter from the first kick to the final whistle, making the season-long action even more thrilling for fans, players, and clubs alike. Now, how will it work, right? These are details. And again, nothing is definitely solidified in terms of format. But they do mention it'll be 3 divisions, right? The USL Division 1, which they're launching. Championship and League One teams will earn promotion or face relegation based on their season performance, ensuring a dynamic and competitive landscape where ambition is rewarded. That does not say we're going to have 3 teams promoted from the lower divisions to the next level, or we'll have 3 teams relegated, or we'll have a promotion playoff system, or we'll do, it doesn't have any of those details yet. And that's important. Right, Rob? It's important to know, because
devil is in what, Jason?
If you the details. If you have one team promoted every year and one team relegated, does that feel big enough? If they do it that way, does it feel big? Because it's technically promotion and relegation.
That's a very controlled and measured way to go about it. I wouldn't say that's a bad way to introduce it. Maybe there's like a bedding in period when there's less teams and more teams have to get waivers and all that stuff. Yeah. So or even could be like, they institute it and the person who finishes first has like a certain amount of time to get those PLS requirements or something like that. Almost like have a banked promotion.
I did see, I think it was in Paul Tenoria's piece that this will be a thing where clubs are going to have to go out and look for new investment if they want to be making a push. Right. And we don't know which clubs will be ambitious, which clubs will be less ambitious. Obviously, you don't want to risk relegation, but I think if you kind of like just thread the needle, you can maybe stay in your division and not have to sweat it too much. Who's going to really want to push and spend? Right? We've seen that the negative side of pro-rel in some cases is clubs spend themselves into trouble while they chase pro-rel. Right? Or they get promoted and then, oh my God, they're not good enough to stay in that division and the bottom falls out. And now we're either talking yo-yo or we're talking about dropping down divisions. And obviously poor management can come to the USL just like it's come to English League One clubs and clubs that, at Bolton or Southampton, clubs that have dropped from the top division all the way down. And what you're afraid of in a country where there's not baked in cultural and generational support for that club is people stop showing up for a league that depends on game day revenue. And obviously they're going to work on television deals and they need to get all that ancillary income for a league though that hinges on game day revenue largely. If people stop showing up because now you're in League One and 2 years ago you're in the championship or first division, that could be a thing.
Well, part of like kind of the contrary, the flip side of that was written in the Tenori article that with USL being based on game day, that fall that drop off won't be as stark because maybe less people go to the games a percentage, but it's not like overseas where the difference between an EPL
Yeah, sure,
television
sure,
contract money and a
sure.
championship money for
That's
TV is
true.
completely
Yeah.
different.
Right. Well, we are taught. Well, but so you could say, oh, oh, we were making 100 million, just to use round numbers. We were making 100 million in the top division, and now we're only making 30. And oh, look at that, that's a 70% drop, and now we're in trouble. But because but in terms of percentage wise, it could still be significant, even if the numbers aren't as large. If our revenue was 200,000 last year and now it's 100,000, that's still a 50% drop that you're dealing with. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just saying that these are the realities. Now, I'm going to acknowledge what's on the screen here. Bob Salvatore, owner of the Charleston Battery, and quoted in Paul Tenoria's piece, he was at a fan event and was asked about pro-rel. And when he said he would be for it, there was a cheer that went up among the fan base of the Charleston Battery. And by the way, you can see on their logo, that's an old team by American soccer standards, 1993.
One of the longest
wee
consistently operating, I believe.
Some of us were still listening to Crisscross back then. I was not expecting that to happen, Salvatore said. I didn't know the question was coming. I certainly didn't know a rousing cheer was coming, but I went home and I was like, whoa, they really want it. I think this is a product and an audience and a consumer decision that makes a lot of sense. I see that demand. I see that signal. Man, we've got to do this. All right. And again, this is one owner who's on board. Another owner on board, Brett Johnson, owner, Rhode Island FC, one of the owners of Rhode Island FC, also has an interest in Ipswich. So think about where that team has come and where they are right now. And he says, the journey with Ipswich and seeing what promotion does revitalize a club, by extension, a community. I believe there's nothing like this construct in sport. Every single game matters, requires excellent on and off the pitch. Excited to adopt it on our shores, and I think for USL, it's a brilliant move. I think USL is already creating itself as one of the best developmental leagues in the world. I think it will take us to another level. The timing is perfect because I think increasingly a lot of eyes are looking to America with the World Cup coming.
What a great perspective from seeing it from, Ipswich came from the third or fourth tier, and within 10 years, we're at the pinnacle of English soccer. He's come into the United States, Rhode Island, year one, gets his team to the final, knows what this can do to the community. Very interesting perspective, and good to see, or interesting to see that he's so on board for this idea.
And I will say this is absolutely a point people can make, and fairly, that we've not had promotion and relegation. We've not had a league do this. We've not had an organization do this, and we still had clubs die. We've still had clubs come and go. We still had, brief supernovas and then nothing. We've still had clubs fly-by-night ownership and all that. So why not do this, right? Again, as a differentiator, why not do this? Why not take a run at this? Again, devil in the details, and we're not going to hold our breath on that. They're saying a couple of months, coming months for details, but I do think this is super exciting. I'm so glad somebody put their money where their mouth was and chose to do this. Again, I think a vote is one thing, implementing it is something else, and I'm not going to count any chickens until they're hatched. And I don't know. I've said this on Blue Sky today. If anybody tells you that A, USL is going to go up in flames and it's going to be a massive failure, or B, this is going to fundamentally change the landscape of American soccer and upend the current structures and bring down MLS, they're lying to you, or they're delusional. They don't know what they're talking about, because nobody knows how this is going to play out, Robert, which is why this is fun. This is why it's interesting. I do not know what's going to happen. It's not like a movie where I can kind of guess the plot points. I don't know what's going to happen.
It's definitely made the American soccer landscape more interesting. A flag has been planted, and while the plans to get to that flag not 100% clear, but it's going to be an interesting journey. We're going to have plenty to talk about on this program. Just at a snapshot, as we're sitting here this on Wednesday, March 19th, lots of teams expansion in the plans, stadiums in the plans, new division in the plans, and promotion relegation all in the plans. So we're on the edge of either the next generation of American soccer or one of the biggest flame outs. If we're gonna do binary, which would you say is more likely.
I
here.
mean, if I were have to choose a binary, if I can't choose a middle road and say it's going to be somewhat successful and USL will see some gains from this, but it's not going to fundamentally change anything, which I know nobody likes that mentality. Nobody likes the that's not fence sitting so much as it's trying to be a realist. I think this is going to be a success. I do. I think this is going to be big for USL. I don't know that it's going to, again, I don't know that it's going to suddenly make USL the most popular soccer league in the country. I don't know if it's going to stop MLS from expanding, right? And Simon Evans mentioned Indianapolis. In his newsletter, he identifies Indianapolis as a likely candidate to go to Major League Soccer because a bunch of higher-ups and muckety-mucks went to Indianapolis recently for Major League Soccer. It looks like things are lining there. And that would obviously take a big market away from USL. I don't think that's going to stop. But I do think this is going to raise USL's profile. It should bring in some new investment. Hopefully we get some new stadiums built. And if you're an American soccer fan, you do not have to choose. I'm going to say this directly to you. You do not have to choose between MLS and USL.
No.
You can like both of those things. You can take joy in the growth of American soccer in whatever form it takes.
Yeah, and I mean, people love soccer. I mean, in the last 10, 15 years, that's been shown by the numbers of people that are showing up at games, large and small. If you are in a city that doesn't have a Major League Soccer team, you can then support them in whatever league they're in.
Absolutely. And as Simon said, Boone, North Carolina is not going to get an MLS team, but
No.
they can get a team that starts at a lower division in the USL and grows into something much bigger. Now, will they have a 50,000-seat stadium one day and all of that? Probably not. But that's not how this game works, right? And if we have communities that can support teams where 8 to 10,000 people show up on a regular to watch their team play, and the players are not making millions, but they're making tens of thousands or hopefully six figures, then that's incredible. And the more we have that, the more players we have on the field, American and otherwise, the better our quality of the sport gets. And all of us can one day dream that impossible dream of winning a men's World Cup. That's the only way we get there. This is one step towards that, I think.
The soccer conversation continues. The pro-rel to United States that conversation will continue here right on Morning Kickaround. If you haven't hit the button already, subscribe. Morning Kickaround on YouTube.com. Would love to have you keep with us and continue to expand this program. We are going to follow this stories and all the different splintering stories from it. Follow along on social media at MKickaround on X, Instagram, Blue Sky. Write us a note. We've been getting some good ones. Morning Kickaround at gmail.com. And if you have some funds to help keep this program become more sustainable and possibly even expand, ko-fi.com/morning kickaround. You got something?
If you know anybody who has a business, interested in soccer, who might want to be involved with Morning Kickaround as a partner, as a sponsor, as behind the scenes working with us, let us know. Apparently, we have cute dogs on the show. That's a new development. So that's bonus. That's a value added situation there.
All right, keep with us. We are going to touch today's non-promotion relegation headlines as we're going to hit Wednesday's long balls here on Morning Kickaround. Long balls here on Wednesday, March 19th. We've had plenty of promotion relegation talk, but there's plenty of other news in American soccer. Long ball number one, United States men's national team hit the field tomorrow night in Nations League action. There's been some roster changes since we last spoke. Max Arfston, Brian Gutierrez, and Jack McGlynn have been added to the team, while Anthony Jedi Robinson, Johnny Cardoso, and Austin Trusty are out.
Yeah, this is not ideal. I'm disappointed about Trusty, who got a call up based on his play at Celtic alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers. Disappointed about that situation. Again, Johnny Cardoso, we knew about that one first. I'm not sure Jack McGlynn is the same kind of player as Johnny Cardoso, but clearly he made some impression on Pochettino if he called him in to replace the Real Betis man. And then obviously Arfstein comes in with Jedi Robinson pulling out. And that's where a red flag goes up, right? That's where the alarm bells start to go a little bit, because Jedi Robinson is not only your starting left back in a meaningful match anytime you play one, he is, if not your best player, probably your second best player behind Christian Pulisic, right? I think we look at his form, we look at what he's done at Fulham, we look at the quality of play, match to match, the consistency, and he's a guy that is in ink on your team sheet, and now you don't have him. And not only that, you don't have an obvious replacement. Right? Tim Ream can play left back, but he's obviously not going to play it like Jedi Robinson. Not even close. He's a stay-at-home left back, if anything. You do have Tim Weah, who could deputize over there. I don't love that. I'm not sure who you put on the wing in Tim Weah's place on the right if you play Tim Weah as a left-sided fullback or wing-back, or however you want to view his potential role. Arfstein can come in, but I don't think anybody is excited about the idea of Arfstein starting meaningful matches, whether it's Panama or whatever. That's a concern for me.
We were just talking about this on Monday with Anthony Robinson. Just he's gone from surprising that he's putting together so many good performances to just like a lock as one of the best in the Premier League. Like watching match of the day highlights with the venerable names that host that program. Just they just say Anthony Robinson with yet another great performance, and it's unexpected.
Yeah,
and so I really missed it. With that brief window a year or so ago when Robinson and Serginho Dest were both healthy and in the team, and the national team was straight up fun and more dynamic than I can ever recall the team ever being. And they were a threat moving forward. There was goals and creativity in the team. Obviously, Dest has been out for a long time. Hopefully we see him in the next couple windows or so, but losing Anthony Robinson, I know it kind of like diminishes my excitement and expectations for this camp. Where are you at on your outlook for tomorrow's game?
I mean, I'm not going to suddenly say, if we don't beat Panama, it's okay because we lost Jedi Robinson. No, the standard is still there. The expectation is still high. This is what Pochettino gets paid for. He gets paid to be a good coach and win games when things are not ideal. Right? This week in the media, he's out there saying things like the United States can be number one in the world in 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years is a blink of an eye in international football. That is a massive statement. Now, I'm not going to throw it out and reject it and say he's crazy. You have to consider the context of why he's saying it. His job is to boost American soccer. His job is to win soccer games and coach up his team. But on some level, he's also that face of the program, that face of American soccer on the men's side. And saying stuff like that is kind of comes with the territory. Don't look too closely at it. It's just part of the deal. So if he's saying it, if he's willing to say it, well, then he has to back it up with the results on the field. And we'll see what happens with the other semifinal. I think you would be favored against either Canada or Mexico, all things being considered. But it's a little bit of a different task than Panama. And I'm not trying to disrespect the Canaleros. Like, Panama's decent. They bring it. They've beaten the United States in recent years. But come on, this is if we're talking about NCAA tournament, which is happening right now, this is a 1 versus an 8. You would still favor the 1 every single time out, even if the 8 is capable. And it doesn't matter that Jedi Robinson's not there. You've brought in the players. You should be deep enough to figure it out. It might take a tactical tweak. Maybe you play a stay-at-home left back, and maybe play Tim Weah on the right to give yourself something going forward. Obviously, how Christian Pulisic gets along trying to cut inside without an overlapping run. How does that affect the way the U.S. plays? These are all questions that Pochettino gets paid a lot of money to answer.
We shall see what happens. USA set to take on Panama Thursday night at 7, and we can all watch that on Paramount. We'll see. Long ball number 2 here on Wednesday, March 19th. An opportunity to see another stadium rendering, Jason. This program loves to look at stadium renderings and check out what all the new plans, the fantastic stadiums that are going to be popping up across this country. And this time we've been gifted with some renderings from Denver's NWSL plans.
Yeah, I mean, look how pretty that is. Overhead shot, it's not real. It's just imaginary right now. Overhead shot of this NWSL stadium plan in Denver. 14,500 seats planned at the Santa Fe Yards, the team announced yesterday. They want to open this by the spring of 2028. What a year 2028 is going to be in American soccer. Wow. They want to open this by the spring of 2028. They want to have a park. They want to have future mixed-use development. This is for the expansion team in Denver. NWSL awarded Denver the 16th franchise in the NWSL. There are some details here in terms of funding and tax breaks and stuff that I don't want to get into. I'm sure Neil DeMoss at Field of Schemes is going to be covering this one. So I think he's still doing his thing. Go read it. If you're one of those people who looks questioningly at these kinds of deals, even if they're called even they're privately funded stadiums, go read Neil DeMoss. I'm sure he'll dig in. Ryan Rosenblatt is also somebody to pay attention to on Blue Sky. Soccer writer, guy who's very skeptical of these kind of deals. If that's your inclination, if you just want to celebrate building a soccer stadium for a women's team in America, well, let's just look at pretty pictures.
Hey,
oh, look how pretty it is.
Those AI people are having the best time ever.
They're having the best time, those AI people. Look, there's a woman with her daughter. She seems to be walking. The daughter's not moving. I know how that feels. There's an open end here, which I'm not a fan of. But come on, beggars cannot be a whole lot of choosers when it comes to the NWSL. We've got one purpose-built women's soccer stadium in America in Kansas City, and then this will be the second one. It is indicated that this could be expanded, and I'm assuming because of the open end, could be expanded to 20,000 seats. Now, once you get to 20,000 seats, you might be wondering if maybe that team that plays out in Commerce City at Dick's Sporting Goods Park should move to this stadium. B-Ray is saying that the open end is because of the view of the mountains. You don't see if you're looking at this rendering, there's no mountains in the background there, which means you are looking east, because if you look west, there's always mountains.
The beautiful view that is eastern Colorado and Nebraska.
Oh, eastern Colorado, Nebraska. It's pretty flat. My mom was born out there in the plains of Colorado. I know what it looks like out there. I'm more of the mountains kind of guy. So hopefully, that is the view through the opened end, the mountains, the Rockies in the distance. Here's another shot. This again, it's pretty. Is it going to look exactly like this when they build it, Rob? We don't know yet, but I'm excited for the possibilities.
I think it's pretty ambitious to start with a 14,000 person stadium. That's nothing to scoff at. I mean, like you said, it's only going to be the second purpose-built women's soccer stadium. The group is calling this the largest ever investment in women's pro sports, which is quite a bold statement in its own right. I mean, don't do any half measures there in Denver with this program.
Do you know how many teams averaged greater than 14,500 last season in the NWSL? Do you know how many teams? Take a guess real quick.
2.
I believe it's 3.
Ooh.
I believe 3 teams averaged more than 15,000 and 14,500. One of them being Portland, another one being San Diego in their third year, Snapdragon Stadium. They've done very good work. And I believe LA, Angel City, has also done it. And there's a couple teams that have done very well, but still, it's ambitious. It absolutely is.
I was curious. Do you think that I saw in a comment that B-Ray does not think that the Rapids would ever move there?
Well, you got different ownership groups. You got control of revenues, things like that. Obviously, Kroenke Sports owns the Rapids, and this is a new group in Denver for the NWSL team. So I could see, it could be something as simple as that, right? They paid to build Dick's Sporting Goods Park. It's a very different environment. It's not what we think of as the ideal for a soccer stadium. It's out there kind of in the plains, as you described. Like it's in a place called Commerce City. What do you think that place is like? I'll give you a couple guesses. It's a lot of parking lots. It's a lot of extra fields for youth tournaments and these kinds of things. So yeah, it is. It is probably unlikely to see that team move, which is kind of sad, to be honest with you, because you wonder what the Rapids could be if they were a little more central, a little bit more in the area where people are in Colorado.
Yeah, the Denver NWSL expansion group, definitely with that American twist, having a stadium rendering without the team name selected yet.
Now, see, we got a guest waiting, and I'm apologizing to him because we're making him wait. But I just throw this in for B-Ray because he's hitting home runs, mixing my metaphors in the chat. Going back to the USL talk, I can definitely see them challenging the Rapids and moving a D1 team there. Could you imagine a USL D1 team popping up in that stadium when they get it built? That could be a thing. That could certainly be a thing. There's no territorial concerns. Like USL can put a team wherever they want to challenge an MLS team. So they could absolutely do that. Could we imagine two teams occupying the Denver metropolitan area?
Exciting times in American soccer. We got stadium renderings, expansion talk, a new Division I league, and promotion and relegation all swirling around here, and lots of great stuff. If you haven't already hit the subscribe button, do so now. Join the MK Ultras and become part of the American soccer conversation here on Morning Kickaround. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Morning Kickaround on youtube.com. Follow us on social media at mkickaround on the X, Instagram, and Blue Sky platforms. Write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Or, share a little bit of the De Niro Morning Kickaround or at ko-fi.com/Morning Kickaround, and take a breath here and come right back and talk US Open Cup here on Morning Kickaround. Another hot topic here on Morning Kickaround. Round 1 of US Open Cup 2025 got underway this week. And to dig into it and the various storylines that come from the Open Cup, we are welcomed by the founder of thecup.us, Mr. Josh Hackala. How you feeling? And thank you for joining us here on Morning Kickaround.
I'm exhausted, but that is pretty typical for we got 3 days in a row. We've got 32 games in 3 days, but I will say I'm happy for the schedule makers. They did us a solid, and apparently after this, there's never more than 16 games in a round. So that's pretty wonderful for someone who has to stay up and edit stories and try not to pass out, because the closer I get to 50, the harder these all-nighters become. So that's really what it is.
I think the most temporarily stressed people I know: Santa Claus around Christmas time, tax accountants around tax time, Josh Hackler around the U.S. Open Cup's first round. So that's what we're at. Josh, what were the take? I was scanning the results from last night. I think I caught only one amateur team knocking off a pro team. Is that right?
Yeah. 40SC, who made a little run last year from the UPSL. They beat Texoma FC, the new USL League One team. That was the only upset out of the 11 games. The rest of it, they were pretty competitive games for the most part. We had a couple of penalty kick shootouts and another extra time game, but they were pretty competitive except for the end, which, frankly, just selfishly speaking, we always joke about Open Cup after dark when those West Coast games start, and then inevitably they turn into penalty kick shootouts, and we're just all screaming for the game to end because we're all exhausted. But Ventura County FC destroyed Laguna United 7-0 to help us go to bed at a reasonable hour.
One little nugget off the field that came out was that the Open Cup announced that there is a new prize money. The prize money being announced as $1 million purse to the winners.
Yeah, I think that's a huge bonus. I think that has been one of the things that we've talked about a lot over the years. I think everybody has their own opinion of how to fix the Open Cup, and we've all got a laundry list of things. I always feel like the one thing that people always bring up, just make the prize money huge, and I'm like, well, okay, it's easier said than done. That's other people's money, but I think having a $1 million purse is nice. It still dwarfs in comparison to Leagues Cup, but it's still a big step in the right direction. And I think that will change some teams' approach to this if they know that there's going to be a little bit more of a payoff in the end. I still I hate to maybe I don't want to criticize. I don't say if it's criticism, but I think I would still love to see them do wins per round, give you some money per round, rather than the team that makes it the farthest in Division III, the amateur league. Like, you get $50,000, which is not nothing. That's a pretty nice chunk of change if you're a small club. But I feel like more teams could benefit, and you'd probably get more mileage out of that money if you, even if it was a smaller amount, having each round you win, you get another smaller chunk of change.
Yeah, it looks like we lost Robert. The hazards of doing a live program, something went down there. But talking to Josh Akala, Cup.us, U.S. Open Cup. A lot of attention on MLS participation the last couple of years. Josh, they kind of threw a tantrum over things last season, didn't enter all of their teams. More teams this year, still not everybody. Give me your sense of sort of MLS's involvement and how it's impacting, or how it will impact this tournament.
Well, there are 16 teams entering this year, so more teams. All the teams that didn't enter a team have MLS Next Pro teams going, and that's something. At least you get the name. Obviously, you want Inter Miami to be in the tournament. Inter Miami 2, not as great, but at least you get the name out there. Columbus Crew 2 is playing, and I think that's on tonight's schedule. So you've got all the MLS Next Pro teams, which they're not as high level, and they don't have the following as the senior teams do. But I think having 16 MLS teams, they all enter in the fourth round, which is what we used to do, and I think that's a big plus. But I think that the way that they structured this year, with having every game in the first round, all 32 games were amateur against pro, and I think that really helps get the tournament off on the right foot, because you get a little bit of David versus Goliath already. Granted, a Division III pro team versus like a high-level amateur team. Is there a giant gap sometimes? Not always, but I think we saw, unfortunately, for those who want to see cup sets, we only had one last night, but we still got 2 more days to go. We got 13 games tonight and 8 games tomorrow.
Yeah, the 13 tonight, I imagine there's a couple of highlights. I wanted to mention Appalachian FC, NPSL team getting a chance at one of those USL League One teams you mentioned. There's a team very local to me in Northern Virginia, Virginia Dream, that'll be down in Richmond, facing off against the Richmond Kickers, who have a proud history in this tournament. One of the lower level teams that has done sort of big things in the MLS modern era. And of course, that's the upshot. I know we're just starting this, Josh, but the upshot, people want to see that team surprise everybody from a lower division, win it. We had Sacramento making a final. You see any candidate? I know that's really tough to know, but do you see any candidates here in 2025?
I really want to see what the Des Moines Menace do with their, which I'm sure you'd want to talk about, all the former MLS players that they've rounded up. I think there's 7 of them that are on the roster. It'll be curious to see what kind of results they get. The Menace are traveling to Sporting Kansas City 2, so we'll see. I think that's a pretty solid matchup for them right out of the gate, and we'll test some of these old legs. And of course, I hate to call it old when they're like 6 or 7 years younger than me, but it's when you're in your upper 30s, you're not a spring chicken anymore. So we'll see what they have. But
let me give everybody a sense of that Des Moines Menace team. It's actually 8 now because they added Victor Ulloa. Okay. So Victor Ulloa, Sasha Kleshtin, Dax McCarty, Ozzy Alonso, Ozzy Alonso, that's incredible. Benny Feilhaber, who's I think co-captain with Sasha. Bradley Wright Phillips, which is a fascinating one. I think they asked him last year and he said no. They finally convinced him to play. Matt Hedges, who I saw Tom Bogert report, still wants to find an MLS contract, so he's not even technically retired from his professional career. And Justin Miram, who had a long career in MLS. So, yeah, it's an interesting story.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's taken this long. I think really the only issue is the cost. I mean, it's not cheap to fly all these guys around. I hate to break it to you, but those 8 players are not, settling down probably in the Des Moines metro area. So, you got to fly them in. You got to have them train with the team. I imagine they probably fly them in the week of and get some training in and try to be ready for the game. And that's not cheap. But, the Des Moines Menace have an owner with some deep pockets, and I think they want to make some headlines. I think the problem with these USL League 2 teams and these NPSL teams that rely on college players in the summer is that they can't use them in this stage of the tournament. So the NCAA rules, you can't use them. So you have to find other avenues to put a team together. So Des Moines qualified based on their performance in last year's League Two season, but that's not going to be the same roster they put out there. So they're trying their best to put out as high a level team as they can, and they thought, why not get some headlines while we're at it?
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Josh. I know a lot of the Des Moines picked a lot of the good recently retired players to join their Open Cup squad. If you were to pick one for a retirement 11, who would be the player? I mean, like I said, they picked up some of the good recently retired players, but if there was a player that you'd add to your Open Cup team, who would it be?
I remember when Clint Dempsey was like just starting his broadcasting career, and I remember thinking back then that when he started doing that, I was like, man, he's got to still be in shape. I got to think that he's going to want to get in there and get recruited by somebody, like one of those teams near him. I don't know, even there's several Texas teams you could choose. Maybe he's based in there now. But now he's I always thought that was kind of my wish. Also, just the way that his Open Cup career ended by ripping up the referee's notebook. Not a maybe great send-off for your Open Cup career, but that was one that I always wished. But I mean, the problem is you just don't know how well these players stay in shape. After their career, a lot of them, still try to get out there and run and maybe play some low, local leagues and things like that. Maybe some ringers, but. We got Bill Hamid, who was on that Virginia Dream team, the former DC United goalkeeper and Open Cup champion, and he was on that team, and they made a rule change that said when you are on a roster for a qualifying team, you can actually sign with another club. So it made it so that I think the idea was that you wanted to have it with younger players. Like if you make an impression in qualifying, and then a pro team wants you, like you're cup tied, and that's unfortunate. So they changed that rule, and so now Bill Hamid was in with Miami FC in the USL Championship.
That's fascinating. I wanted to get an update from you on the roster rules around this, because if we were going to build a recently retired team a la Sasha Kleshin and Benny Feilhaber, are there rules about the number of American players? I know that's been a thing in the past.
No, they just, you really just have to fill out a amateur declaration form. So basically to say, I'm an amateur player. And I think that they used to have a large gap between how you couldn't just declare to be amateur and then turn around a couple weeks later and then, sign with the pro team. I remember there was a gap, there was a amount of time between those. So they didn't want people just jumping back and forth, but I don't think that is as much of an issue.
All right. Look, Diego Valeri is on television. I'd like to sign him up for my team. I think I could have that guy in my U.S. Open Cup squad. What do you think, Robert? It's pretty good shout.
Yeah, I think that would be definitely it boosts the average amateur cup talent level. And then I see Mike Thomas has a funny suggestion. Sebalatu. Is he getting thrown into the mix?
Josh would know this. Does Sebalatu still hold an Open Cup record? Didn't he hold an Open Cup record at some point?
The modern era's leading scorer. So, and I think he's in coaching now. I don't know if he's still playing, but I don't know. That could be. I always thought about that for some players that I would interview for some of these stories and recaps and things, and I would say if you get one more goal, you'll be the leading scorer for this or that, and some of them kind of get up for that, but I think Latu is still the leading scorer in the modern era. So yeah,
there you go.
Well, thank you, Josh, for kind of bringing us up to speed and giving us some color on the Open Cup. First round kicked off this week, and be sure to visit thecup.us for all the coverage of the U.S. Open Cup. They've been covering it in full since 2003. Thank you so much, Josh, for sharing some time with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please be the next to join the MK Ultras and keep boosting those subscription numbers. We're on a great trend. We're on the edge of 1,500, on the way to 5,000. So be the next to do so, and tell your friend to be the next after you to subscribe to what we're hoping is one of the new centers of the American soccer conversation.
Yeah, I want to encourage people as well. If you watched this morning, maybe for the first time live, and you heard us talking about the USL and the promotion and relegation plans and the USL First Division, we have a rack of videos on the channel about those very topics. We even covered potential expansion teams for the USL Championship. I think we're going to do a USL League One version of that at some point in the near future. Is a really great community building around Morning Kickaround, which I think is awesome. So yeah, definitely subscribe, be part of the show, and we'll let you know as things develop around here.
All right. Like and subscribe to the channel. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. If you want to get in touch with the program for any old reason, follow along on social media at @mkickaround on the X, Instagram, and Blue Sky platforms. And if you're able to, thank you for anyone who has donated some funds. And thank you to anyone who's going to do so in the future. Visit ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. You can do a one-time $5 donation or something larger or something reoccurring. We are grateful for anything you can provide. Hot show today, Jason. 2 hot topics.
Incredible.
Can you believe it? Just the sizzle coming off this program is outstanding. Exciting times here in American soccer, to say the least. So we will be back again on Friday morning for more Morning Kickaround, and plenty of action to be had between now and then. So until Friday morning, everybody, please enjoy your soccer.